Hey, writer, ready to take your fiction to the next level? Whether you've just got a great idea or you're already stuck in the murky middle of writing your book, the Wicked Good Fiction Bootcamp I designed just for you. This 8-week self paced online course gives you the tools, the guidance, and the support you need to get to the end of your book and know that it is wicked good. Head to susievidori.com/bootcamp or follow the link in the show notes for more information and get started today. I'll see you inside where I'll be there to support you as you comment and share your work throughout the course. Welcome to Show Don't Tell Writing with me, Susie Vidori, where I teach you the tried and true secrets to writing fiction, nonfiction that are going to wow your readers, broken down step by step. We're going to explore writing techniques. I'm going to show you a glimpse behind the scenes of successful writers' careers that you wouldn't have access to otherwise. And I'm also going to coach writers live on their pages so that you can learn and transform your own storytelling. Whether you're just starting out, you're drafting your first book, you're editing, or you're currently rewriting that book, or maybe even your 10th book, this show is going to help you unlock the writing skills that you didn't even know you needed, but you definitely do. I'm so looking forward to helping you get your amazing ideas from your mind onto your pages in an exciting way for both you and your readers so that you can achieve your wildest writing dreams. And you're going to also have some fun doing it. Let's dive in. I'm thrilled to have writer Candace MacPhie on the podcast today as she prepares to launch book 3 in her independently published Back in a Year memoir series. This book 3 is entitled Hello, I Am Here. I met Candace early on in her memoir writing journey when she'd written a draft that read more like an itinerary of the epic trip she took around the world in the 90s. It's been my absolute pleasure to coach Candace through her writing journey as she transformed these books into the sometimes spicy and always messy backpacking trip that readers get to take alongside her, where we want to laugh and cry and sometimes strangle Candace as she makes some questionable choices along the way. And as you'll hear her say in this interview, hey, if I did it, I put it in the book, even if I was a bit of an idiot. But Candace MacPhie is far from an idiot. She spent years backpacking and working around the world. She holds a Bachelor of Commerce degree, an MBA, and worked for 20 years on 4 different continents in corporate before finally tackling this series and unpacking everything that happened. When she's not at her computer yelling, just a few more pages and then I'll make dinner, she loves hiking in the Rocky Mountains, swimming, reading romance novels, and making up new cake recipes. She especially likes to laugh and spend time with her husband, the self-proclaimed grumpy mother effer, and her 3 awesome kids. It has been my honor to support Candace as she shepherded these books into the world, and I value both our professional relationship, friendship that's grown from this journey. Welcome, Candace, to the Show Don't Tell podcast. This is long overdue.
I'm so glad to be here.
So glad because you've got book 3 in the Back of the Year series coming out this month.
I do. Finally finished. So excited.
So tell us a little bit about the series.
So the series is it's a travel journey, but it's not a travel journey. It's a whole experience. It happens in the 90s, and it's around when you're just trying to figure out who you are, what you are, and just get into it and travel around the world.
I love that you're talking about this like it's fiction. It's your story, right?
Yes, I know, but it's been so much easier to write if I kind of pretend it's a fictional character, because there's so many times where I didn't like what I did and I just thought I was a complete idiot. So it was much easier to kind of distance myself from it and to be able to not apply this brain to the brain that I have.
So technically a memoir, but one of the things that I love about this series is that when you don't shy away from telling us those things that you did that maybe weren't, you're not trying to rose color it or make yourself look like you made the best decisions during that time. So it's awesome.
Oh, no, it was very cringy, especially in the first book. There's a lot of cringy in the first book. And I sat on my computer and stared at the cursor, blink, 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 blink. And I just thought, you know what? It happened. I'm just going to write it. And I wrote it and then read it and then was a little harder and a little softer and kind of went through until it made sense.
Yeah, awesome. And
Yeah.
how did this project start? Because you had some journals from your actual trip. So this is based on a trip that you took that was how long?
A trip that I took when I said, which is why it's called Back in a Year, I told my family, oh, I'll see you in a year. And we all kind of side-eyed each other and everyone knew it was going to be longer than that. But I had no agenda and I just said, okay, I'm leaving. I need to go. And I've always wanted to do this. I've always wanted to travel. I ditched my job, ditched my car, ditched my furniture, and just left with the bag.
And how old were you?
I was old for traveling. I know. I was
Relative.
26. And at the time, that was old. There was a lot of hostels that I rolled into where there was like 18-year-old giggling. And I was a little long in the tooth to be a traveler at that point. But I still, and that I think was part of the charm to me because I thought that this opportunity to travel had passed me by, but it didn't. So I just stuck in there and did it.
Yeah. So it's going to be a 5-book series, right? So how did it start out? Again, you had some journals.
Yes, no, I had some journals. And from the trip, I had the journals. Then I transposed the journals and thought, wow, those are pretty awesome. And then I had a friend of mine read it. And you know what? I called her and texted her and I was DMing, I was doing all this stuff to get some feedback on it. And she didn't call me back. And I thought, wow, we both love books. What's going on? And finally we talked and met for coffee. And she said, okay, I don't know how to tell you this, but it was like reading an itinerary. And I just went, thank you. Like, that is the best feedback you could have given me because I didn't realize what I didn't know. I'd worked in the corporate world before. I was excellent at whipping together a PowerPoint, but I thought I knew how to tell a story and I didn't. And that was a wonderful, like, eye-opening experience for me because then I thought, well, okay, I know how to do this, but I don't know how to turn these nuggets of funny things and crazy stuff that happened into a story. And that's when I needed different help. And that's when I found Susie Vidori.
Yeah, we've been working together for a lot of years on this project, and it was a lot of fun because that first draft, and I don't know, you probably worked on it between.
I did. It had moved on from the itinerary, but it was still very rough.
But there were things that were itinerary-like, and that's the same thing that I found when I was coming from corporate and wanting to write a novel. I thought because my spelling and grammar was awesome and the things, but it's like those unwritten rules that I've had to hack through and figure out that were really fun with you because Candace is the most amazing writer because you can give her feedback and she says, thank you. That's not common, Candace. So no.
Feedback is a freaking gift. People should just be happy. I've always loved like constructive feedback that someone gives you. And if it hurts, then you know it's a good one. But it's something that you need to go. And even if you have to rock in a corner for a while and go, okay, now I'm ready to face this feedback and dig into the feedback and apply the feedback. And the process that went from transcribing from journals into actually telling a story was so much longer than I ever anticipated because it wasn't just about like the stories from the journals. What working with someone like Susie or working with you particularly for me was this growth of I had them all laid out. So I had them like I knew what I wanted from a sense of a structure and I knew what I wanted in sense of the experience I wanted the reader to have. So that I was very clear on. And then once I interviewed a bunch of folks and everyone said, oh, that's great, but let's try this. And Susie was the one person who said to me, okay, do it. But then she works within the parameters of my goals to be able to develop me as a writer, to be able to take those individual stories and be able to make it into one cohesive book that has a beginning, a lovely middle, and an end, and the drama and everything else. And that's what I had to learn. And that took me years. Like it it was like a university course on the job with just the feedback that I had. It probably took 3 goes before I got feedback on the story. It was like the first three passes I had with Susie was always feedback on writing and how I can improve as a writer. And then I would take all that feedback, reapply it to the book, go in again, dig in again, go through the whole thing again, and then say, okay, what about this version? And then I would still get feedback on, okay, certain nuances of how to be a writer. Then finally on the third go, I got feedback on the story. And I was like, okay, that to me was such a milestone personally in terms of, okay, I still have a long way to go to be able to present this in a way I wanted to. My goal was I knew it was going to be 5, and it's like, oh my God, that's so many words. But when we talk about show, don't tell, and I was telling for the first version.
And telling is not always bad. There's places to tell, but you need to, at some point, immerse us in that story. And that's a particular technique that makes a huge difference to your reader's experience.
It does, but it's more work, right? So it's more work and it's more words. So then what happened was, once I understood about the arc of the book and what I was really wanting to tell, one of the most impactful things that you have said to me ever.
I promise you, listeners, that I'm not paying Candace. I don't know what she's going to say.
No. Is once you understand your story arc, you will be able to get rid of scenes that aren't as impactful. And you will know which scenes you need to really beef out and go through and really show.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that I remember about that time. When was that in 2020 that we started working together? I think, or 2021 maybe?
Yes, it's been a while.
And so what I remember about that time was that Candace came to me with this manuscript, and like you said, you'd interviewed some other people before, and they all had ideas on how to change it or how to add to it, make it their own. And that's not my style. Like you said it really eloquently, but I really just care about what the writer's goals are and then helping you get the skills to meet that.
Yeah.
But what I did say to you was, don't worry, we're going to find the room for all these things because there's stuff that doesn't belong here. And I could feel Candace get her back up a little bit.
I was uncomfortable with that.
And I said, don't worry. I promise we're not going to take out anything important, and you're going to see that. And there's a lot of things that you can take out that aren't going to change your story. And there's ways to do it. And that was attractive to you.
Yes.
Because there's actually technical ways to just take out words.
Yes.
That I think
use those.
Yeah.
It wasn't just that.
It wasn't just that. But then we went further. But there were ways at a minimum. And like, okay, this person at a minimum, I can help her get this word count under control and make some space for some of these things that are going to make her writing really exciting.
And that was the thing that was frustrating in the beginning, because as I got the feedback on how to move the story along and make the story more compelling, it just took more words. And I would watch the bottom corner and the words would go up and up. I'm like, oh my God, what's happening right now? But it was easier once I was able to go through and really understand the competencies of a writer and say, okay, what does this scene do? Does it further? You have all these,
like it happened, but that doesn't mean that you need to tell us every single thing and every coffee that you bought and every time you woke up and every time you fell asleep.
Exactly. And I had all these tangles of what I call them threads of, I don't know what other people call them.
I call them threads. Yeah, for sure.
The threads of the story. And I'm like, okay, does this move thread 1 to 7? Okay, which thread does it move along? And does it deserve to be there? And then I would make sure that each scene added to one of the threads or was a precursor to something else that happened after. So it needed to be there because it was the first step in the next two steps.
And if it doesn't need to be there,
I took it out. And you know what? I think the jarring thing for me was as I would delete it, but I would always save a version. I'm like, okay, I'll just save the version.
I do the same thing.
So I have about 120 versions. So I'm like, I'll just save that version because I don't want to lose those words because they were such lovely words. But once I deleted that section and then looked at it and went, okay, it's way better. And it was this, I felt powerful. The words felt powerful. I was able to go in, and the story was much more compelling as the reader was able to go into it. One of the other things that I learned on this journey was dump me in, right? And I always thought,
Sorry, dump you in?
dump you in. Yeah,
Okay.
he said that to me one time. And it was always, I always thought you needed like a slow roll, like you were just starting the car and driving slow out of your driveway. But it was more like slam on the gas, dump me into a scene. So because this book moves so much, you go from one place to another place, I really wanted the reader to experience what it was like in that time period, what it was like to be hot and sweaty, what it was like to be frustrated, what it was like to see all these things for the first time. Because back then, the only references we had was like National Geographic and like the encyclopedia. And yeah,
For traveling in the
Yeah.
90s. And we
There
used to
was-
carry around like travel guides.
travel guides, which did have
Pre-internet.
pictures, and you wouldn't know what anything looked like until you got there. So everything was like this big surprise. So what I wanted was the reader to be dumped. This you said, dump me in. I'm okay with being dumped.
Because you have so many things. If you're going to
Mhm.
do the slow roll for every single scene, like it's
Yeah,
going to take you
I know.
forever, right?
I know that word.
Yeah.
So I've got very good, I felt, at saying, okay, how much information do you need? Because if you're reading a book and they describe a house and then the rest of the book takes place in that house, they don't sit in the dining room or whatever, but you don't need to describe something, maybe just like the feel of the chair or something. But everything was completely, every scene you're in a new space.
Yeah.
So I have to be economical with my words in terms of descriptions. I'm different. I don't want to tell you the same thing each time.
Yeah, and
So-
we had that same issue. Candace's project was interesting because in the memoir, we're dealing with real live events. And if it were a novel, I might change it. But you can't because you can't change it. This is what happened. And one of the things that happened in Candace's books is what I like to call character soup. Because in a novel, we can control how many people we have to meet.
Yeah.
And Candace was saying about the setting, but the same thing happened with the people because it's very transient when you're traveling. And that was part of what you wanted to show was, oh my goodness, a friend in every port, right? Like we're literally going from place to place and meeting all these people. And how do we make that cohesive? And we had a lot of discussions about that. And we came up with some really cool ways to make it feel like it was almost like we treated all of those randos that you met along the way as one character arc, right? And
Yes.
so what was important was how you were reacting
Yeah.
to meeting new people and
Yes.
to make it feel cohesive. Also did something really cool, which is very Candace, which is made nicknames
Yeah.
for each person to make them more memorable so that if they pop up, because it was like, because she'd done it from her journal, she originally had all their names and their first name and their last name and how tall they were. I think I remember saying, stop telling me how
I love being tall. I love knowing about how tall people are. But yes, as you told me no.
I could do it sometimes, but he was around 6'1" with brown hair, and we just needed to mix it up. We had too
Yes.
many characters.
Too many introductions.
Yeah.
I made them all like red shirts from Star Trek because I thought, well, do you know Star Trek?
Yeah, of course.
Because when the red shirts go down to the surf,
They're disposable,
yes,
right?
they're disposable, and it sounds awful. But I think for me, if someone gets a name, you know that they're in it for longer than a page or two.
Yeah.
If someone is referred to, and I just would constantly say, okay, what were they like? Did they have big ears, or did they have, I don't know, big forehead, or someone had groovy glasses or whatever? And I would just nickname them and just call them groovy glasses. I just found it was easier to keep track of people.
It was so fun. It made it such an easy read. And for those of you looking for a memoir read, these books are hilarious. She doesn't hold back on her interesting decision in the 90s, right? There is lots of intimate moments. There are funny moments. There are all the things that you would expect in a travel book when somebody has said bye-bye to real life for a little while. And yes, there's also the travel piece of it, but that isn't what it's about. It's not about, and I remember you saying that really early on, it's really about the growth and learning and the things that happened along the way. It's not, if you want a guide on what the pyramids look like, it's probably not your book, right?
No, it's not a travel guide, and it's easy to dip into that. And that was always the challenge for me. That I need to tell you enough information so you know where you are, but this is not a travel guide. So that was where I tried to be very economical with the things I would describe or where we would go. And a lot of it was around, so for example, in book 3, we go visit the Dome of the Rock, and that's in Jerusalem, and you have to go in and you get checked by Israeli soldiers, and then you go in and you get checked by the Muslim soldiers. And then if you're not dressed conservatively enough, then you have to choose from the bin and put on these.
Which I think was an issue for the Candace that went on this trip.
Yeah.
Right?
So I remember my long pants and t-shirt, but still it was always, and then you'd have to get searched. So actually walking around the inside of the Dome of the Rock is half a page, but there's a lot of interactions. And there's some lady who had diplomatic immunity. Honest to God, she had a South African accent. It was like lethal weapon. She's diplomatic immunity. You can't search my bag. And then it was a big thing. We were all waiting for a diplomatic immunity lady to have her moment. And so it's just fun stuff like that and weird interactions and constantly just trying to deal with the challenges of being on the road and enjoying yourself at the same time, but all these external factors. So trying to balance all of that with and tell the story as you go through.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's talk. It's come up a couple of times already in this interview, but let's talk about word count for a second, because your first drafts were really long. And that was part of our first discussion was, hey, I'm sure that we're going to find places to cut. But let's talk about that. And what did you end up deciding? Because you were hard bent against cutting word count.
Very uncomfortable. I was very open to learning how to be a better writer, but the word count and cutting the story was very difficult. And that's why I went back to the one thing that you said to me, like I said, was really once you understand the story you're trying to tell, it will be clearer what's important to keep and what's important not to keep. And I also had to get over my own personal hurdle of, I want this to be a record of my travel. And I said, you know what, Candace, your journals are a record of your travel. This is an entertaining story of a time period of someone going through something. My mom had died. I was trying to deal with that and had all of this sort of just general sort of anxiety and sadness inside me. And I was trying to dig through that. And along with all the interactions and all the people along the way. And that was more important. And to be able to share that clearly and funnily, so it's not like a super, boring.
Not a downer, for sure not a downer.
No,
Fun
it's not
beach
a
reads.
downer. It's a fun one. And what I tried to do was constantly keep in the funny interactions and the weird things that happened, the weird people we met, the crazy situations. And I still am amazed when I look back and go, holy banana. Like, I don't know if all that would happen now. I think because people are so much more organized about their trips and organized about where you go, this was just such a different experience. It was just a roll with it. And just the crazy things along the way. But the word count, though, said it was scary for me because I didn't, until I got into really understanding the story I was trying to say, it was very uncomfortable to cut anything. And once I understood that, even now I'll go through, once I've written something, I'll say, okay, and even at the beginning and the end of a scene, can I try to cut off a paragraph maybe at the beginning or the end? Because I look at, I don't know, once upon a time I heard that's what they do with newspapers. Like they can just end it. Like you can just cut some of the end. Yeah. Just squish it. And that's where I'm doing. The other thing I take solace is through the David Bowie. I don't know if you've heard of this. Okay, so David Bowie, now this is secondhand. So my husband told me this. I don't know where he heard it from. Hi. This is apparently what David Bowie used to do. He'd write lyrics for a song and then he'd cut them up and then he'd just rearrange them. So what I found was if I'm trying to write something, I'm trying to make it shorter. If it's not working, then I take a step back and say, okay, does a paragraph need to come before the other one, or do I need?
I love that. The David Bowie. I'm going to use that. I'll have to look it up and see if it's real. Yeah.
I do David Bowie it because I think maybe sometimes a paragraph should happen a couple things early. What I enjoy, and I know this isn't a promotion thing, but what I've enjoyed in terms of what I've learned from you is Susie will say, what happened? Like you might have a prompt And what I think is from that prompt is I might have that information 3 paragraphs later. But what I've learned is that you need that information sooner. So then
Readers need that information.
Readers.
And the first couple times, Candace, I just really think you're impatient. But the thing is, for visual readers, sometimes we need things in a different order. And if you're asking a question and your reader is confused and it's answered on the next page, they're going to skim to find that. And they're going to miss all that good stuff in between. So you might as well put it up front.
And I think that was where the feedback for me was very valuable, because I thought, okay, no skin on my back. Like, I just cut it from there, move it up, and then just maybe change a few words around or something. But through the process of doing that, I would constantly ask myself the question, is there information missing? And I would usually have it further down, but it was the order of things, just making sure that it's presented. One of the other things that I think with the discussions that we've had was just the longer I can keep the reader engrossed in the words, then the better. If you're not, I think if you're swimming and then you pop up for something, that's what happens with a book. If the word is wrong, or I spend so much time.
If you get pulled out because something doesn't.
Like it doesn't. Yeah. The word is not quite right, or there's one sentence which is just jaggy, everything's flow, and then you have this one sentence that's just about, I could have spent another couple minutes
off topic,
it's just not formulated as the others, and it really stalls the reader experience. So spend a lot of time listening to the book, a lot of time.
That's something that we work on a lot.
And I write it, and then I listen to it, and I read it, and I listen to it, and I find I can get, it sounds really bad, but I always can get a little lazy when I just don't listen to it, because I think, oh, it's a good enough sentence. And then when I listen to it, you hear it.
Yeah.
It's just how I work. Some folks might be like on paper, like zero, right into it.
It's hard though. On paper, your brain actually fills it in and rounds it out for you. If you say those jaggy sentences, you can hear them. Yeah. And so actually we'll drop in the show notes. I've got some instructions if listeners haven't used a listening pass before, because you can do it even on your rough Word documents. You can have your phone or your computer read it to you. And it's a hugely useful exercise. And it also gets you up from your desk. Do it on your phone. Go for a walk. Yeah. Do something else.
I use the read aloud function on Word.
Yeah.
And you can just.
You do it at your desk,
in
right?
the search line, read aloud. I'm not as, I don't know. I find I need to be right there, because I'll be like, oh my God, I have to choose that word right.
Yeah.
But I pace, I'll pace while I listen to it. Otherwise, I watch the bouncing ball go by on the words. And it does help from a grammatical perspective, but it's easier if I'm pacing, where we're just not focused on the document and just really spend the time listening.
So switching gears for a second, I mean, you've alluded to this already, but taking that first draft from documenting the facts or documenting your journey, your itinerary, into creating a book that is engrossing and engaging and entertaining and all the things that you really hoped for when people go on this journey.
Yes.
You really had to dig into why you were writing the book. We had some discussions about that earlier, and you alluded to, you realized the book wasn't really about the journey. It was about you processing losing your mom and all these things.
Yeah.
How has writing this series changed you?
I think that was a fantastic question. For me, I really thought I was completely healed. And I thought, I dig into grief in book 2, and it all happens around all the sort of rapid pace adventures that we do. But being able to articulate it in a clear and concise way, and to be able to have the ebbs and flows and ups and downs when things happen, or understanding triggers. For example, in book 3, I don't know if your mom used to do this, but my mom used to make these sandwiches before we'd go on a road trip. And then she'd put them back in a sandwich bag and close them up.
I do that. My mom didn't do it, but I do that.
Yes. So anyways, at one point, someone I'm with does that.
Like the bread bag.
The bread bag.
Yeah.
You put it back.
The loaf
bread
bag.
Yeah. So you have a long loaf, and you can see the loaf, but then it's got all the sandwich. So it was the person I was with did this, and then made all these sandwiches and put them back in the bread bag. And I thought I was feeling pretty good, but seeing that bread bag triggered all those emotions again. And I was right back to where I was. But I have to put that on the page and I have to share that with you in a way that the reader will go, oh,
Yeah, I get you.
yeah. And to be able to do that, I feel, it is going to sound really silly, but I feel stronger. Like I feel
It's not silly at all.
strong.
Writing is always personal.
And I feel that now that I've been able to share that, I hope someone reads it and goes, oh, I feel that way too. But then what did you do? So I almost have, okay, what did I do after it? How did
you get through?
how did I push through? What did I do to
Good or bad, right or wrong?
Yeah, right or wrong. And those feelings are there. And what I'm trying to do is try to be as, and those are the hardest ones to write. I can go through and dump you in a scene and say, okay, here you're in Jerusalem, walking the streets of Jerusalem. But being able to intertwine those very poignant personal moments and that's where, to me, that's where the meat of the story is. And that's where you feel that, okay, I'm on this fast-paced journey, but then I'm also the person to experiencing this journey. For me, I feel a lot stronger, not just in my skill as a writer. And and what I love about writing is there's so much growth.
It's such a challenge. I know. That's why I ended up here too.
Constant growth and it's constant learning journey. And I love learning journeys. But for me, actually reflecting and being thoughtful to the feelings has really helped me appreciate and go, okay. So I feel stronger.
Awesome. And you always knew that you would write this book. You took those journals with you on those trips with the intent of writing this book. So why do you think it took you 30 years? But why didn't you write it before? There's a really, I'm actually asking a question. I don't know what your answer is going to be.
Here we go. Okay. So I grew up from 14 to 22. I looked after my mom. She was really sick. And we all did. It was a family job. We looked after my mom. That was our job. She had cancer, a whole bunch of it, and lots of operations, and it was all hands on deck. So I felt that after growing up that way, I had these dreams and these thoughts, but I think I just needed some stability. So what I did was I got a real job. I'm doing air quotes.
Yeah, you can't see Candace's air quotes. But
I got
I'm a real boy.
I'm a real boy. And went to work, came back, and that's when it was uncomfortable, and that's when I left and traveled. And I think for a lot of years, I maybe slipped back a little bit into that and thought I tried to write it like a number of times, but I didn't have the skill or maybe the maturity or maybe the distance to be able to do the story justice. And enough time had passed that I could be true to the person I was. And I'm mature enough now to be able to say, okay, I was a total idiot, but I'm going to put that down because that's the person I was. And you know what? Like, whether you thought, we can all be an idiot. So I'm just going to put this down and just be really real. And I wanted people to read the book like they were having just a conversation with me. You could just relax and read it and go, oh my God, what is she? And I tried to write it over and over, but I was caught up in what I thought should be. I thought I should work. I never thought writing was really something I could really wrap my arms around in terms of a career, a job, and also needed the headspace to be able to learn how to do it, the headspace to be able to do the story justice. So it just took some maturity. I think I just needed to really mature and to be able to tell this story in a way that I could not make excuses for myself. It's not a thing Susie told me especially in the book one.
I love it when you throw back quotes at me. I have no idea what I said to Candace. So what are you going to say?
You can't, you did it. Like, you just have to suck it. Like, it wasn't quite like that, but it was.
That doesn't sound like
it was just, you can't make excuses for yourself. I think I've done something bad. And then
when you're writing about something that happened, it's
and
like
justified it. And you're like, no.
If there's a pig, put the pig on the table, describe the pig, right? That's the
way. And you can, this is not how it is done. So I need to be able to have to do that. I wish had I started earlier, they would be different. And I don't think they would be as true to what they are, because now, and also I'm going to say this in the nicest possible way, I feel braver now. Like, I'm older. I actually don't care if you think I'm an idiot. I might have had more of a personal.
You might have tried to hide some of your adventures.
Yeah.
And there are some spicy adventures in this one, let me tell you.
So I'm like, oh, maybe I need to just back off or whatever. And I'm like, you know what? I don't care.
Yeah.
I'm just going to put it in there. And if you think I'm terrible, then fair. Okay. I hope you have fun when you read it.
Okay. So I've got some quick fire answers for you here. Or some quick fire questions, sorry. Hopefully your answers, whatever comes to mind. But speaking of being an idiot, in these books, one thing that comes up over and over again in book 1 and book 2 is your relationship with the character Josh. And like people just want to strangle poor Candace because she keeps going back to this guy during her journey. So here's my quick fire. Is Josh in book 3?
Yes.
Oh, Josh is in book 3, right? I did know that, but I know that readers that have read book 1 and book 2 are going to say, Candace, when are you going to kick him to the curb? Did we kick him to the curb in book 3? Maybe that's a spoiler.
Yeah, that's a spoiler.
Yeah, it's a spoiler. Okay, you'll have to read it to find out. Okay, so how long, quick fire, how long did it take you to write that first book? The first, like, between starting to write it and publishing it? How long?
6 years.
6 years. Yeah, that's pretty typical. And now how long does it take you to write the next books in the series? Giving yourself a year, 9 months a year.
I give myself a year, but it's just with life gets in the way. But I would probably say I could knock out a decent book in 6 months, and then there's the editing and review process.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. And what's your best advice for memoirists that are just starting out?
I think I took great guidance in my not including anybody else's secret. I included conversations I had with people and interactions and how it impacted me. But if someone shared something with me that was personal, that's not something they signed up to. I left that out. It was my reaction to conversation. That's where it is.
Yeah, I love that. Setting boundaries. And that's something when I work with memoirists, that's something that we have a discussion about really early on is where are your boundaries? And you had those already when we met. So that's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay. What was your first big break where you were like, okay, this is really going to happen? These books are...
I think it was just...
Were you always, or you just always knew that these books were to make?
No, I think it was after the third review with you. And it sounds really bad. But once you got to a point where I got feedback on the book rather than the writing style, I knew I could do it.
Yeah. When you were like, okay, the story is finally resonating, right?
And what you said to me, okay, I get where you're doing with this. And you didn't get it before, but once you got that, then I said, okay, I'm on to this. Like, I can do that. That was that push through that.
Well, it changed a lot from when we first started talking until then. You had to make a lot of decisions in terms of what the book was. And so, I could see where you wanted it to be, but it was a bit of a push and pull.
Yeah.
Maybe a little kicking and screaming. No, just kidding.
No.
Maybe a little dragging you through some things to get you there. And then you were like, oh, wait a minute. Now I see it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that.
It was a learning journey. And I hadn't had a learning journey for a while, so I enjoyed it.
Okay. So book 3 is called
Hello, I Am Here.
Hello, I Am Here. I love that. And I know why it says that. I'll have to read the book to find out. Where can we find you, Candace? The book is up for pre-order and will be available
May 21st.
May 21st.
Yeah.
So by the time you're listening to this, it may already be available. We're in 2025. So where can we find you?
We can find you on my website, CandaceMacPhie.com, and then through Amazon as well, and app.
Okay. Yeah. And thank you so much for coming on the show today. Truly, if you were looking for an amazing beach read this summer, pick up the first three books in the series. You are going to go on a wild ride, and you might want to strangle Candace after those first couple of books, but I promise it keeps going. It gets better. Thank you so much for being on the show. We'll have you on again soon.
Sounds good. Thanks, Susie.
Thanks for tuning in to Show Don't Tell Writing with me, Susie Vidori. Help me continue to bring you the straight goods for that book you're writing or planning to write. Please consider subscribing to this podcast and leaving a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever else you're listening. Also visit susievidori.com/newsletter to hop on my weekly inspired writing newsletter list, where you'll stay inspired and be the first to know about upcoming training, events, and writing courses that happen in my community. If you're feeling brave, check the show notes and send us a page of your writing that isn't quite where you want it to be yet for our Show Don't Tell page review episodes. Remember, that book and your writing is going to open doors that you haven't even thought of yet, and I can't wait to help you make it the absolute best. If you're feeling called to write that book, keep going, and I'm going to be right here cheering you on. See you again next week.
Have you ever received feedback on your writing that crushed your dreams? It feels awful, doesn't it? My name is Julie Artz. I'm an author, editor, and book coach. I'm committed to giving actionable, honest feedback, minus the dream-crushing part. But I also want each of you to have a group of critique partners that you can rely on to help you parse the feedback that you do get on your writing. Not only do they offer fresh eyes on your story, but they can offer support in a way that keeps the writing journey from being quite so lonely. So that's why I'm thrilled to announce that we're running another round of my free critique partner matching service, CP Meet Cute. The process is simple. You sign up and I'll send you a series of emails with all the details. Writing is a lonely journey, but you don't have to do it alone. So I hope you'll sign up for CP Meet Cute today. Thanks so much.